Section 1 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Soup. Almendra. Wash a cupful of rice and put in a double boiler with a quart of milk and cook slowly until every grain is tender. Shell and blanch a half pound of almonds, chop fine and then pound in a mortar. Add, a few drops at a time, a half cupful of cream, forming a smooth paste. Mix with this a tablespoonful of sugar, a little ground chili, and a pint of milk, and put all in with the cooked rice and simmer for half an hour. Season with salt, and if too thick, add more milk. Caldo de Pescado. Chop 4 onions and fry in 4 tablespoonfuls of oil. Add 6 tomatoes peeled and cut fine, 1 herb bouquet, a sprig of parsley, a glassful of white wine, 4 tablespoons of oil, 1 chili pepper, and 4 tablespoonfuls of flour. When brown, add 3 pints of water and boil a half hour. Then add 6 slices of fish of almost any variety. Remove the herb bouquet, add salt, and pour over crusts of dry bread. Chili bisque. Take 8 large sweet chili peppers, remove seeds and veins, boil and put the pulp through a colander. To this add a cupful of boiled rice, mashed smooth. Season highly with Tabasco and salt. Beat an egg with a half cupful of cream and add to a quart of hot milk. Put the bisque in this, let boil up once, and serve immediately, pouring over toasted squares of bread. Cordero. Cut a pound of young lamb into small chunks and fry with a sliced onion in hot lard. When nicely browned, add 3 peeled and sliced tomatoes and 3 green peppers chopped fine. Cover with 2 quarts of water and simmer slowly. Add a cupful of green peas, 1 of green corn cut from the cob, a half cupful of rice, salt, and chili pepper. Work into a raw egg a teaspoonful of oil and a half teaspoonful of vinegar. Put this in the bottom of the soup tureen and pour the soup over it. Gitano. Into 3 quarts of good beef stock, put 1 onion, 4 cloves of garlic, and 1/8 of a pound of salt pork. To this add a cupful of beans and a pound of salt codfish which has been soaked overnight. Cook slowly, and when partly done, season with chorizo (Mexican sausage) and add some potatoes peeled and cut into dice. Mexican noodle. Use 2 quarts of any clear stock. For the paste, take a small cupful of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 of flour, and a little salt and cayenne. Beat 4 eggs and add slowly, also a half cupful of cream, making a rather thin batter. Have the stock boiling and let this batter run into it through a very small but coarse sieve. It will make long strings which must boil 10 minutes. Rancheros. Fry a large cupful of minced vegetables, mostly onions, in a small cupful of butter. When a light brown, mix in a small cupful of flour and set the pan in the oven for the mixture to brown through without burning. Then scrape the contents of the pan into 3 quarts of soup stock and add 2 cupfuls of dry stewed tomatoes, 8 cloves, half a bay leaf, and a teaspoonful of chopped chili pepper. Cook an hour, skimming the top occasionally, and season well with salt. End of section 1. Section 2 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. 100 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Fish. Cangrejuelos. Put a teaspoonful of lard in a deep porcelain saucepan, and when hot add a quarter of a pound of ham, chopped fine, an onion chopped, salt, and chili powder. When these are well browned, add a pint of picked shrimps and stir until hot. Then put in a half pint of washed rice, a bay leaf, thyme, and parsley. Cover and simmer with sufficient water added to cook the rice until each grain stands out alone. Caracoles con perejil. Soak the snails in salt water, then wash them in 2 or 3 waters. Crack the shells and throw them in boiling water with a little salt and herbs. Cook 15 minutes, drain from the water and pick the snails from the shells. Fry some chopped onion, garlic, and parsley in olive oil and add a bay leaf and some thyme. Dry the snails and put in this with a seasoning of salt and pepper and fry 20 minutes. Thicken with a little flour and at the last moment add the juice of a lemon. Langosta a la Catalana. Remove the lobster meat from the shell, lay it in a bowl so as to save all the water that comes from it, and cut in quarters. Chop 4 large onions and a bunch of parsley, mash 4 cloves of garlic, and fry all together in a half cupful of olive oil until nearly brown. Season with salt and cayenne, add the lobster with all the juice, a cupful of washed rice, and a tablespoonful of capers. Cook until the rice is done. When serving, put whole pimentos on top. Pilchers. Take the sardines carefully from the box, skin and bone them, and lay on brown wrapping paper until ready to use. Cut strips of bread a little longer and a little wider than the sardines, removing all crusts. Fry these in olive oil a delicate brown. Lay a sardine on each piece and put in the oven until heated through. When ready to serve, sprinkle each one with grated Parmesan cheese and lay a thin slice of pimento on top. End of section 2.
Section 3 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Meat. Buey ahumado y huevos. To a cupful of chipped beef, soaked in hot water and chopped fine, add a cupful of strained tomatoes, 2 hard-boiled eggs cut fine, 1 tablespoon of grated cheese, 1 grated onion, a chili pepper chopped fine, and a big lump of butter. Beat all these together. Break in 2 raw eggs and scramble in a frying pan. Chili con carne. Cut a pound of fresh pork into inch chunks and parboil. Soak 5 chilies in hot water. Take out the seeds and veins. Wash them well and put in a mortar. Mexicans use the molcajete and tejolote. Pound it into a pulp, adding a little garlic, black pepper, 2 cloves, and a cooked tomato. Fry this in hot lard. Then add the meat with some of the liquid in which it was boiled, and a little salt. Cover and let it cook down until rather thick. Chorizo. Cut 1 pound of fresh pork and 1 pound of beef into small pieces. Chop 2 pods of garlic and add 1 teaspoonful of ground chili, 1/3 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1 teaspoonful of black pepper, and 1 of oregano. Season with salt and mix all together with a glass of port wine and fry in 2 teaspoonfuls of olive oil. When ready to serve, break in 2 whole eggs and scramble together. Chuletas de ternero. Trim veal cutlets and season with pepper and salt. Roll them in flour and lay them in a frying pan in which 6 onions chopped fine have already been placed in hot lard. Cover the pan tightly and let the cutlets fry, turning to cook the other side. Add a tablespoonful of vinegar, a little thyme, a bay leaf, a clove of garlic, and some comino seed or chopped parsley. When the cutlets are well browned, cover them with boiling water and move the pan to the back of the stove and let them simmer in this spicy bath for 2 hours. Serve with garnish of fresh, crisp, cold radishes. Estofado. Heat a tablespoonful of drippings in a saucepan and put into it 2 whole green peppers, 1 onion sliced, 1 clove of minced garlic, 1 tablespoonful of vinegar, 2 tomatoes peeled and sliced, 1/2 cupful of raisins and olives mixed, and a pinch of thyme. Add 2 pounds of round steak cut small, cover closely, and stew slowly and thoroughly. When serving, put squares of toast on the platter and pour this over. Guiso. Cut a round steak into small pieces and put into frying pan with a tablespoonful of hot drippings, 4 tablespoonsful of rice, a cupful of boiling water, and a sliced onion. Cover closely and cook slowly until tender. Remove the seeds and veins from 4 Mexican peppers, cover with a half pint of boiling water, and let stand until cool. Squeeze them from the water with the hand, getting out all the pulp. Add salt and a little flour to thicken. Pour this over the cooked meat, let boil for a moment, and serve very hot. Jamón con pimientos. Cut a pound of ham into small chunks. Add to this a pound of sausage meat, 2 onions, and 2 tomatoes sliced, a sprig of parsley or a few comino seeds, and some small bits of dried chili pepper. Fry these together in a little butter or drippings, and then add a pint of boiling water. Stir in a pound of soaked rice, cover, and set where it will cook slowly without stirring. Salt to taste, and serve hot. Lengua de buey cocida. Dissolve 1/2 cupful of salt in enough boiling water to cover a beef's tongue and cook until just done. When cool, remove the skin and slice thin. Take a dozen chili anchos, or large dry chilies, cut them the long way, remove all seeds, veins, and the stem end. Drop the skins into boiling water with 1/2 cupful of salt, press them under the water, and keep at boiling heat 2 hours. Skim into a chopping tray. Chop fine and press through a sieve. Add a teaspoonful of powdered summer savory, 2 of finely chopped onion, salt, and a 1/2 cupful of olive oil. Squeeze the juice of 2 lemons into a cup and fill it up with vinegar. Add this to the sauce by spoonfuls and a bottle of olives stoned and cut fine. Heat and pour over the tongue as it is served. Loma de vaca. Take 1/4 of a pound of suet, slice thin, and fry until thoroughly melted. Put a sliced onion in this and fry until brown. Then put a 4-pound roast of beef and brown on all sides. Take the juice of a large tomato, the pulp of a chili pepper, 2 whole cloves, 1 teaspoonful of vinegar, 1 of sugar, salt, and a dash of pepper, and put in the pot with the meat. Add a little water, just enough to keep from scorching. Cover tightly, set on the back of the stove, and cook slowly until tender. Serve with brown gravy. Patitas con maní. Scrape, singe, and wash the pig's feet thoroughly clean. Place in a kettle with plenty of water to which a little vinegar has been added and boil until tender. Peel, quarter, and parboil some potatoes and have a cupful of roasted peanuts, half of which are whole and half ground. Remove and dry the trotters and fry with the potatoes and peanuts in hot olive oil. Season with allspice and salt. Stir constantly so as to brown on all sides, cooking about 10 minutes. Puerco en estofado. Solder in a fry pan a pound of young pork cut small. Add the livers and gizzards of 2 chickens, an ounce of green root ginger, and 3 stalks of celery, all cut into small pieces. Then add, a little at a time, a mixture of 4 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 of wine vinegar, 1 of Worcestershire sauce, a dash of powdered cloves, salt, and pepper. Add a 1/2 cupful of boiling water and cook until nearly done. Then put in a cupful of bean sprouts and 1 of small mushrooms. Puchero grueso. Cut up 3 pounds of beef, 1 pig's foot, and 1/2 pound of ham. the giblets of a fowl and a chili pepper, and simmer together for 2 hours. Add a slice of pumpkin, free from seeds, half of a small cabbage, a large carrot, a bunch of herbs, 2 large onions, and some broken macaroni. Cook an hour longer, then put in 6 small sausages and boil until they are done. Strain, thicken the gravy, and serve meat and vegetables on separate dishes. Tijuana. Chop a clove of garlic very fine, peel and slice a medium-sized onion and fry both with a pound of sausage meat made into balls. When it begins to brown, add a pint of tomato and 1 chili. Meantime, scald a pound of tripe. Scrape it with the back of a knife and cut into strips about 2 inches wide and 5 long. Roll each and tie with a thread. Brown quickly in butter, dredging with a little flour. Remove to a hot platter, making a circle of the rolls of tripe. Lift the sausage balls from the sauce and heap in the center. Strain the sauce, season with salt, reheat, and pour over all. Tripe Spanish. Boil the tripe until tender and cut into narrow strips. Brown a sliced onion, a clove of garlic, and half a chili pepper chopped fine into 2 tablespoonfuls of olive oil. Thicken with a little flour. Season with salt and add a peeled tomato cut fine and a pinch of smoked Spanish sausage. Put the tripe in the sauce and cook 15 minutes, adding a little water if necessary. End of section 3. Read by Ellen Corcoran.
Section 4 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Fowl. A la moda. Boil a well-cleaned fowl slowly until tender. When cold, cut from the bones in small pieces, and to these add a tablespoon of chopped parsley, an onion, and a pepper chopped fine. Season with salt, chili powder, and a little Spanish sausage. Line a mold with cooked macaroni, pour in the chicken, cover lightly, and steam for an hour. Serve with tomato sauce. Chili chicken. Boil a chicken until tender. When cold, cut into small pieces. Wash and dry a cupful of rice, put in hot olive oil and fry for a few moments. Add a peeled tomato, an onion cut fine, salt and chili peppers or powder. Put in the chicken and some of the broth and cook until the rice is tender. Gallina con garbanzos. Put the giblets of a chicken with a sliced onion, a little parsley, and grated lemon peel in a frying pan with fresh lard or olive oil and fry slowly. Cut up a chicken, slice some ham or bacon, put these in with the giblets and fry brown. In a separate stew pan, put a little of the strained gravy, salt, chili pepper, a teaspoon of olive oil, and 1 of tarragon vinegar. Add the browned fowl, also the giblets chopped fine, some chopped onion and parsley. Last, put in a quart of green peas and cook until the peas are done. Serve with the peas in the center and the chicken piled about. Ganso en aceitunas. Boil a goose until well done in water to which has been added 2 cloves of garlic and 3 chili peppers. Lift from the water, dry, and put it immediately in a pan of sizzling hot bacon for a few minutes, turning it constantly so that every part is covered with the hot grease. Add a ½ pound of coarsely cut olives to the gravy before serving. Mexican turkey. Soak 15 chiles anchos, or the broad dried peppers, without roasting, in a pint of water. Then grind with 2 onions and the boiled giblets of the fowl. Fry all in oil, adding a large pinch of oregano, wild marjoram, salt, and a little vinegar. Stuff the turkey with whole onions and boil until about half cooked. Remove, Wipe dry and put in a pan to roast. Add the liquor in which it was boiled to chili sauce and pour half of it over the turkey. After it is roasted for half an hour, turn and pour over it the remaining sauce and cook until tender, basting often with the sauce in the pan. Mole de guajolote. Boil a turkey, save the broth, and cut into pieces as for serving. Remove all the seeds and veins from a pound of dry chili peppers, a pound of broad chilies, and 1 of black chilies. Throw away the veins, but fry the seeds with peanuts, almonds, walnuts, a piece of cinnamon, a pinch of comino seed, and a piece of chocolate the size of a walnut. Fry the peppers until brown and then grind with the seeds to a smooth paste. Fry all together again, then mix with the turkey broth. Put the pieces of turkey in a deep pan with a small piece of lean pork, pour the dressing over, and bake an hour. When dished for serving, sprinkle ajonjolí seeds over the top. Pollo guisado. Steam 2 tender spring chickens for 20 minutes and then cut into pieces as for fricassee. Strain a can of tomatoes and mix with a can of corn and add a pepper chopped fine with a little parsley. Season with paprika, salt, cayenne, celery salt, and black pepper. Put the pieces of chicken in this and thicken with cracker crumbs. Turn into an earthen baking dish, put big lumps of butter over the top, and bake for half an hour. Polluelo en estofado. Quarter a young chicken and fry in plenty of olive oil with half a cupful of finely chopped onion and diced raw potato mixed. Let this all fry until the fowl is white. Add a little fine parsley and chopped green pepper and a little hot water. Season with salt and pepper and simmer over a slow fire until thoroughly cooked. End of Section 4.
Section 5 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Stacey M. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Vegetables. Arroz en el horno. Take a pint of any very strong vegetable stock and mix with it 4 tablespoonfuls of big whole rice. Add a tablespoonful of chopped green pepper, a peeled tomato, an onion finely shredded, a big lump of butter, salt, and paprika. Put all in a small stone jar. Cover with a loose lid and bake in a slow oven for 2 hours without stirring. Beans Mexican. Soak 2 cupfuls of pink beans in 6 of water overnight. In the morning, add a small onion and boil gently until soft. Take out the onion and set the beans to drain. Put a large tablespoonful of fresh lard in a skillet, and when sizzling hot, add the drained beans. Mix beans and lard thoroughly until each bean seems to have a coating of the fat and begins to burst. Add a cupful of the liquid in which the beans were boiled and gently crush a few of the beans with the spoon to thicken the gravy. Add the remainder of the bean liquor and a chopped chili pepper and simmer until the beans are quite dry. Chili rellenas. Cut chili peppers lengthwise down the sides. Remove the seeds and carefully roast in hot ashes, after which the outer skin can easily be wiped off. Grate dry cheese and stuff the peppers full of this, and press the 2 sides together and fasten. According to the number of peppers being prepared, take enough eggs for a liberal dressing. Beat the whites and yolks separately to a light froth, and then mix them. Have ready a frying pan with sufficient boiling lard to cover the peppers. Dip each pod into the frothy egg for a moment, then drop into the boiling lard, pouring over each more of the egg while the frying peppers are turned. Serve with a chili sauce to which has been added a few chopped green walnut meats. Sidra Coyote. Take young summer squash, wash and remove stem and flower, and cut into dice. Put in a stew pan a tablespoonful of pure lard, and when hot, add a half teaspoonful of finely minced onion. Stir about and then put in the squash, salt, and black pepper. Fry for 10 minutes, stirring often. Then add tender sweet corn fresh from the cob, in proportion of a half cupful of corn
to a full pint of squash. Cook until sufficiently soft to mash. Ejotes con vino. Cook string beans until tender in boiling salted water. Fry a little chopped onion and green pepper in oil until brown. Add the beans and some white wine with a seasoning of salt and pepper. Estilo seco. Boil a pint of pink beans until very tender in plenty of water, adding hot water as it boils away. Put in a frying pan a heaping tablespoonful of lard and butter mixed. Strain the hot beans from the pot and put into the boiling fat. Add a sliced onion and seasoning of salt and red pepper. Stir well and allow to brown slightly. 10 minutes before taking from the frying pan, add 7 tablespoonfuls of grated American cheese. Serve with thin slices of hot buttered toast and sliced cucumbers with oil and vinegar. Enchiladas. Make a sauce of 1/4 cupful of olive oil and 2 tablespoonfuls of butter heated together. In this, fry 2 green onions, a bunch of parsley, a little celery, a leek, a little garlic, and green peppers, all chopped fine. Season with salt and a tablespoonful of the Spanish sausage. After all is well cooked down, add a 1/2 cupful of good stock. Boil some macaroni until tender, and then plunge in cold water to blanch. Place orderly on a wide platter. Strain the hot sauce over it and cover the top with grated Edam cheese. Frijoles. In the bottom of a bean jar, put a whole onion with a clove stuck in it, 3 whole cloves of garlic, 4 pieces of mustard pickle, and 3 tablespoonfuls of the mustard vinegar. Over this, put a layer of uncooked red beans and a piece of salt pork, then more beans. Over all, a tablespoonful of sugar. Fill with hot water and bake slowly all day. Renew with hot water from time to time. Frijoles con queso. Boil 2 cupfuls of red beans until soft. Drain and put in a skillet with a tablespoonful of hot lard and fry, pressing a few to thicken the gravy. Add a cupful of hot water, and when bubbling, put in a cupful of grated cheese. Season with salt and chili sauce. Fuente Italiano. Boil spaghetti until tender. Strain and put into a deep baking dish. Chop an onion and a clove of garlic fine and add with 3 peeled sliced tomatoes. Dilute chili powder to taste in a little water and pour over all. Cover the top with grated cheese and put in the oven to brown. Green chilies. Boil 2 pounds of meat until tender and chop fine. Add a large ripe peeled tomato, 2 sliced onions, 2 slices of bread chopped fine, raisins, olives, salt, and a tablespoonful of vinegar. Fry all these together in olive oil and season with a little sugar and pepper. Remove the stems and seeds from 6 green chili peppers and stuff them with this dressing. Dip each chili in a rather stiff batter and fry in deep drippings. Habas España. Soak 1 1/2 cupfuls of Spanish beans overnight. In the morning, lift into boiling water and boil 3 hours, adding boiling water as it boils away. Drain from the water and add 1/4 pound of bacon and 2 chili peppers. Put a 1/2 cupful of olive oil in a large frying pan. Add 6 large onions and 3 cloves of garlic sliced fine, and fry gently to a light brown. Add 2 bay leaves, a can of tomatoes, salt, and black pepper, and simmer an hour, stirring frequently. Then put in the beans and boil for 3 hours, adding some of the water in which the beans were boiled, if too thick. Macarones. Boil macaroni in salted water. Drain and blanch by pouring cold water over it. Melt 3 tablespoonfuls of butter and add 2 tablespoonfuls of chopped green peppers and 1 of finely chopped onion. Cook 5 minutes and then pour in gradually a small cupful of brown stock and 1 of stewed and strained tomatoes. Season with salt and paprika. Reheat macaroni in this sauce and serve immediately. Mañana land. Fry in a tablespoonful of olive oil a large sliced onion and 8 chopped green peppers. To this, add a cupful of uncooked rice and stir constantly until the rice is nicely browned. Then put in a 1/2 can of tomatoes and fill up the skillet with rich soup stock and cook slowly without stirring for an hour. Papas rellenas. Chop some cold cooked beef and mix with it raisins, chopped hard-boiled eggs, stoned ripe olives, and a pinch of ground cloves. Moisten with port wine and make into little cones. Have ready some highly seasoned mashed potatoes, beaten until light. Cover the cones with this and fry in hot oil like donuts till a golden brown. Pimientos. Chop some cold cooked beef very fine and add 1/2 the amount in each of finely chopped raisins and chopped walnut meats. Prepare the peppers for ordinary stuffing, only scrape rather thinner. Fill with the mixture, dip in thin egg batter, and fry brown. Serve with chili sauce. Plato Fiorte. Select even-sized chili peppers and cut out the stems, seeds, and cores. Make a stuffing of boned and skinned sardines mixed with finely chopped cheese, blended together with beaten egg. Stuff the peppers with this, dip in thick batter, and fry in deep fat. When thoroughly cooked, drain on brown paper and serve very hot. Rellenos. Grind fine a pound of well-cooked veal and add it to a Spanish sausage, chorizo, a 1/2 cupful each of seedless raisins and blanched almonds. Moisten this with the veal stock and season with salt. Broil sweet Mexican green peppers, pull off the skin, and stuff with this. Dip the peppers in a thin batter of egg and flour and fry in hot olive oil. Serve with tomato sauce. Rellenos de queso de Gruyere. Put 6 chili peppers in the oven for a few moments and then wipe off the outer skin. Cut off the tops and carefully remove seeds and veins. Make a stuffing of strips of Swiss cheese, flavored with chopped onion, parsley, and a few drops of lemon juice. Fill the peppers, not very full, with this. Beat 4 eggs, whites and yolks separately. Put together and thicken with a teaspoonful of flour. Dip the chilies in this batter and fry in hot olive oil until brown. Serve with tomato sauce. Stuffed chilies. Take a dozen large green chili peppers and lay them on the top of the stove until roasted slightly on all sides. Remove and wrap in a cloth for a few minutes when they can be easily peeled. Prepare the stuffing by chopping a 1/2 pound of cheese very fine and adding a cupful of fine breadcrumbs, an onion chopped fine, a big lump of butter, salt, and pepper. Beat the whites of 3 eggs to a froth and add 2 tablespoonfuls of milk and flour, enough to make a thin batter. Fill the chilies with the stuffing. Dip each one in the batter and fry in deep hot olive oil. Serve with tomato sauce. Succulento. Fry a 1/2 pound of chopped salt pork with a sliced onion and 6 green peppers cut small. When brown, add a can of corn and 4 small summer squashes sliced. Cover with milk and cook slowly 2 hours without stirring. End of section 5.
Section 6 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Meat dumplings. Albóndigas. Take equal parts of fresh pork and beef, chop fine, add salt, a piece of soaked bread, 1 egg well beaten, and 1 teaspoonful of chili powder. Mix thoroughly and make into small balls, putting each into a piece of hard-boiled egg. In a tablespoon of hot lard, put 5 peeled and crushed tomatoes, a little chopped onion, salt, and chili powder. Add 1 cupful of broth and let boil a few moments. Then put in the meatballs and boil until the meat is thoroughly cooked. Albóndiguillas. To a pound of raw chopped beef, add an onion finely chopped, a little garlic, parsley, marjoram, salt, a 1/2 cupful of peeled and sliced tomato, and a teaspoonful of cider vinegar. Soak 2 slices of bread in broth, squeeze dry, and add a beaten egg. Mix all well together and drop with a spoon into a saucepan of boiling broth and cook 3/4 of an hour. Artificial turtle. Beat together until smooth a ½ pound each of chopped fat and lean veal. Add 3 boned anchovies and season with mace, red pepper, salt, shredded parsley, juice of 1 lemon, and 2 teaspoonfuls of Madeira wine. Mix all together and make into little balls. Dust with flour and stew for a ½ hour. Buñuelos. 1½ pounds veal cooked tender and put through a meat grinder. To 3 cups of the veal add 1 of blanched almonds, 1 of whole raisins seeded, and a teaspoonful of Mexican sausage. Stew all together with a little of the veal broth. When cold, form into little cakes and fry in hot olive oil. Pour over them thickened tomato sauce seasoned with a little cinnamon and sugar. Huevos de carne. Put through a coarse meat grinder an equal amount of fresh pork and beef. Add 1/3 as much bread as meat, soaked in water and squeezed dry, an onion and a chili pepper chopped fine. Season with salt and put in a pan with a beaten egg and mix thoroughly. Roll into balls the size of eggs. Take a quart of strained tomatoes, add the pulp of a chili pepper and an onion chopped fine. Simmer until the onion is cooked, season with salt, and put in the meat eggs and boil gently an hour. Lift them out carefully to a hot platter, thicken the sauce with a little flour, and pour over. End of section 6.
Section 7 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by BettyB. 100 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Desserts. Camote y piña. Boil a pound of sugar to the candy degree, remove from the fire, and add a pound of sweet potatoes, boiled and pressed through a sieve. Return to the fire and cook until thick, stirring constantly. Then add half a pineapple grated and cook a few minutes more. Serve in sherbet glasses. Dolce. Pick the stems from each raisin and wash in boiling red wine. Then put them in an infusion of cognac, Marsala wine, and slices of fresh lemon for 3 days. Remove and heap them in bunches about the size of large goose eggs and wrap each bunch in large fig leaves, layer upon layer, and bake for ½ an hour in a light oven. When serving, turn the leaves back and send to the table hot. Mantecado. Melt a cupful of granulated sugar in a smooth saucepan. Add a cupful of English walnut meats and pour into a shallow buttered pan to harden. When cold, grate or chop fine. Crumble 12 macaroons fine and toast in the oven a few moments. Make a custard of the yolks of 2 eggs, 1/4 of a cupful of sugar, and a cupful of milk. Then pour over the stiffly beaten whites of 2 eggs and let cool. To a pint of cream add 1/3 of a cupful of sugar and beat until thoroughly mixed. Add the custard and flavor with maraschino, then freeze. When half frozen, add the macaroons, crumbs, and half of the grated walnut mixture and finish freezing. Sprinkle the remaining grated walnuts over cream at serving time. Postre de manzanas. Take a goodly portion of Roquefort cheese and about 1/3 as much butter and rub them together until they are thoroughly mixed. Then add about a dessert spoonful of French cognac, or just enough to moisten the mixture well. Peel, core, and slice the round way, rather thick russet apples, and over each slice spread the cheese. Serve with black coffee. Realengo. Rub 3/4 of a cupful of fresh fruit through a sieve, heat and sweeten. Beat the whites of 3 eggs until stiff, add gradually the hot fruit pulp, beating continually. Turn into a buttered mold, set in a pan of hot water, and bake in a slow oven until firm. Remove and cover the top with whipped cream flavored with sugar and wine and decorated with preserved cherries, angelica, or citron. Torto frutas. Line the sides of a baking dish with a light puff paste. Cover the bottom with sliced pineapple. Next, a layer of peeled sliced oranges, then sliced bananas, and then a few thin slices of lemon. Sift a most generous supply of sugar between each layer. Repeat the layers until the dish is full and cover the top layer with chopped nuts. Lay over the top narrow strips of the pastry and bake slowly for an hour or more. End of section 7.
Section 8 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings from the public domain. For more information to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Enchiladas. Enchiladas are made of tortillas sprinkled with cheese, onion, olives, etc. They are adorned with lettuce leaves and radishes, but are always covered with hot chili sauce. Tortillas are the national staple article of food, and are made of Indian corn ground on the metate, mixed with a little water and cooked on a flat surface over hot coals. Sauce for enchiladas. Chili. Cut open 2 chilies and take out all the seeds and thick yellow veins. Put them on the back of the stove in cold water enough to cover them and let soak for 2 hours. Pour off this water and cover again with fresh water and boil 15 minutes. Drain in a colander and save the water in which they were last boiled. When cold enough to handle, take a knife, scrape off all the pulp from the skin, and put in the water in which they were boiled and mix thoroughly. Fry 2 onions chopped fine in olive oil to a delicate brown, add a teaspoonful of flour and allow that to brown also. Stir in the chili mixture, season with salt and let all thicken together. Cold Colorado. Cook for 15 minutes a half pound of large Mexican sweet red peppers, after removing the seeds of all but 2 or 3. Take off the skin, put the pulp through a sieve and add 1½ tablespoonfuls of the Mexican sausage, salt, and a little of the water in which the peppers were boiled. Bottle tightly and it will keep about 3 weeks in a cool place. Mexican chili. Toast 10 chiles anchos, the dried pepper in the broad shape, and 10 chiles pocillos, the dried pepper in the thin shape. Take out the veins and seeds and soak them in a quart of boiling water. Pass through a sieve twice, getting out all the pulp, and fry this chili liquor in 2 tablespoonfuls of boiling lard, which has been thickened with a tablespoonful of browned flour. While boiling, add salt, a pinch of Mexican sausage, a pinch of sugar, a teaspoonful of cider vinegar, and a tablespoonful of oil. Cook all together in the lard for 15 minutes. Salsa Nuez. Scald and peel 2 tomatoes, add a minced onion and a few pepper seeds, season with salt and stew until thick. Strain and add a few chopped green walnut meats. Reheat and serve hot. This sauce is also used with fried peppers. Tomato. Boil 2 pounds of tomatoes in a very little water and then rub through a coarse sieve. Grind fine a half pound of raisins, a quarter of a pound of blanched almonds, an ounce of garlic, an ounce of green ginger, and a half ounce of dried chilies. Add these to the strained tomatoes with an ounce of salt, a half pound of sugar, and a pint of vinegar. Boil all together until thick. Tortillas. Hecho en casa. Take 3 cupfuls of sifted flour, a tablespoonful of lard, a level teaspoonful of salt, and enough water to make it like pastry dough. Roll very thin and cut the size of a dessert plate. Have ready in a large frying pan some hot lard, enough to float the tortillas, but not so hot as to brown them. Put in the tortillas, 1 at a time, and when they begin to blister they are done. This quantity will make about 2 dozen. Tortillas de patatas. Work a large, cold, boiled potato with a big teaspoonful of lard and a teaspoonful of salt into a pint of flour and add water until about the consistency of bread dough. Knead thoroughly and divide into chunks about the size of an egg and roll very thin. Brown very quickly on a smooth, hot stove, turning often. When thoroughly cooked, place between a cloth and keep covered in this way until ready to use. Enchiladas. Americano. Cut 6 large red chili peppers in halves. Remove the seeds and veins and cook in boiling water 15 minutes, then press through a colander. The sauce should be thick and smooth. Chop the dark meat of a cold cooked chicken, season with salt and add 2 tablespoonfuls of the pepper pulp. Beat 2 eggs without separating, very light, and add a cupful of milk. Mix a half cupful of cornmeal with a cupful of flour and a little salt. Pour the egg and milk in this, making a thin batter. Put a little olive oil in a frying pan, and when boiling hot turn in enough batter to make a thin cake about 6 inches in diameter. Shake the pan until the mixture is set, then put 2 tablespoonfuls of the chicken mixture on one side of the cake, roll with a knife and remove to the serving dish. When all are made, pour over the remaining chili sauce and sprinkle the whole with grated Parmesan cheese. Domestico. Have ready 2 cupfuls of cold cooked chicken cut into small bits, over which pour the juice of a lemon and sprinkle with chopped parsley. Also chop 2 onions very fine and 3 hard-boiled eggs. Grate a pound of good cheese, wash a large cupful of raisins and dry them. Have 3 dozen green or ripe olives handy and the chili sauce piping hot. Dip the tortillas in the hot sauce. Place on a large platter, and on one half of it put a little of the onion, egg, chicken, cheese, 2 raisins, 1 olive, and lastly a spoonful of the chili sauce. Fold over the other half and roll slightly. When they are all finished, sprinkle cheese over all and pour over what chili sauce is left. Mexican. Boil 8 large Mexican peppers until tender. Remove skin and seeds and put the pulp through a sieve. Into 2 tablespoonfuls of smoking hot olive oil, put 2 sections of garlic, a teaspoonful of fine marjoram and salt. Add the pepper pulp and cook slowly. Chop 2 onions very fine. Season with salt and pepper and sprinkle with a little marjoram and let stand in a very little vinegar. Grate a pound of Edam cheese. Strain the sauce and return to the stove. Dip a tortilla in the sauce. Place on a plate and spread it with a teaspoonful each of the drained onion and the cheese. Add 2 olives, 2 large seedless raisins, and a tablespoonful of the chili. Roll the tortilla and sprinkle each with onion and cheese. After all are made, pour over the remaining chili and garnish with olives. Nativo. Buy a dozen tortillas and put on a tin in the oven to keep warm. Remove veins and seeds from a half dozen chili peppers and boil them with a small onion and a clove of garlic until all are soft. Press through a colander with the water in which they are boiled and return the sauce to the stove to keep hot. Tear 3 heads of lettuce into bits. Cover with a French dressing and mix with it a cupful of chopped olives and 6 hard-boiled eggs, chopped. Drop each tortilla in hot lard for a minute, then in the sauce. Place on a hot platter and put a big spoonful of the salad mixture in the center. Sprinkle generously with grated cheese and fold over one side, and roll. When all are ready, pour over the remaining sauce and serve hot. Quesadillas. Make thin cornmeal pancakes 6 inches across. Dip one in hot chili sauce. Lay on a plate and cover with raw onion chopped fine, grated cheese, and stoned olives cut in half. Lay on this 6 other pancakes, each dipped in the chili sauce and covered with the onion, cheese, and olives. Pour the remaining sauce over the top and set in a hot oven for a few minutes. Serve hot, cutting like layer cake. End of section 8, read by Inkell.
Section 9 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Section 9. Tamales. Tamales are a mixture of meat or fowl made hot with chilies and wrapped in corn husks. In preparing the dough, or nixtamal, unless scalded meal is used for a substitute, it is necessary to prepare the shelled corn with lime water. The Mexicans grind the corn prepared in this way on the metete, and instead of a mortar use the mucajete and lajolte. To prepare the corn, cover it with water. Add the lime water and boil until the husks slip off easily between the fingers. Then wash in cold water until perfectly white. The lime water is made by adding an ounce of common lime to a quart of water. Stir well and let settle. When cleared, drain off the water for use. 1 quart of lime water prepared in this way will do for a pound of corn. For the wrapping, cut off the inside leaves of the corn husks about an inch from the stalk end and boil in clear water until perfectly clean. Tear a few in narrow strips to use for tying the ends. Dry the rest and rub them over with a cloth dipped in hot lard. For Santa, use equal quantities of cold boiled chicken and veal and half as much ham, all chopped. Mix together and moisten with good gravy. Season with salt, cayenne, and a little chopped parsley. Make a dough by pouring a cupful of boiling water on a quart of fine, fresh cornmeal. Work in a big lump of butter and add water until like biscuit dough. Have ready, as directed, a pile of the soft inner leaves or husks of green corn. Take a lump of dough about the size of an egg. Pat it out flat, put a tablespoonful of the meat on it, and roll for the inner husk. Then put on the outer husks with a thin piece of dough in each. Tie the ends and boil in water containing a few red peppers and a clove of garlic. Genuino. Boil 3 quarts of whole corn in ash lye until the hulls come off. Soak in clear water until the lye is all out, then grind. Remove the seeds and veins from 6 chili peppers, boil soft, and then put through a colander to separate from the skin. Boil a chicken tender and set aside half of the well-seasoned broth, the rest with the chicken. Thicken with part of the ground corn and add the pepper pulp and 3 tablespoonfuls of fine marjoram. For the batter, take the remainder of the broth and ground corn and mix it into a tablespoonful of olive oil. Season with salt and make the dough just thick enough to spread. These proportions will make 15 tamales. Hacinda. Grind 2 quarts of hulled corn through a meat chopper and mix to a paste with 2 tablespoonfuls of melted butter, salt, and cayenne. Divide a large fat chicken and stew until tender in water containing a clove of garlic and a pinch of each of salt, comino, seed, and marjoram. Scald 2 dozen dry chilies, remove the seeds and veins, scrape the pulp from the skin, add this to the chicken stew and thicken slightly with flour. Shape the corn husks with scissors and soak in warm water for an hour. Remove dry and rub each one with hot fat. Fill one with the chicken stew, spread 4 others with the corn paste, fold over the one containing the chicken, and roll the others around. Tie the ends with a strip of the husk and steam for 2 hours. Hot tamal. For the dough, add 1 pint of cornmeal, 1 tablespoonful each of salt and lard, and enough boiling water to make a thick dough. Prepare the corn husks as directed. For the filling, boil 1 pound of beef and pour over it hot beef fat, cut into small bits and season with salt and chili sauce. Put a layer of the dough in the husk, over this a tablespoonful of the prepared meat. Roll like a cigarette with a layer of dough between each husk. Tie each end and steam 2 hours. Lorido Celebrimo. Boil a pound of pork until 2/3 cooked, then grind it rather fine. Add a small amount of garlic, also a small quantity of seeded raisins and prepared almonds. Soak 2½ ounces of chilies in hot water. Take out the seeds and veins, wash them well, and grind fine, adding enough of the stock in which the meat was boiled to make a sauce and strain. For the dough, use the ground corn prepared with lime water. Add 6 ounces of fresh lard to the pound, salt to taste, and moisten with the meat stock. Have the husks prepared, spread each with a thin layer of dough, and for the center one, a tablespoonful of the pork and a tablespoonful of the chili sauce. Roll carefully, tie the ends and steam over the liquid in which the meat was boiled. Mesa redonda. Cover a 4-pound chicken with hot water and add 4 onions, a clove of garlic chopped fine, a stick of cinnamon, 10 whole allspice, 10 cloves, 3 red chili peppers, and a teaspoonful of salt. Simmer until the chicken is tender, then remove and cut into small pieces. Strain the liquor, put the chicken meat into it, add enough yellow cornmeal to make a thick mush, and boil 10 minutes. Have ready the green corn, cut from a dozen ears, and 2 pounds of raisins, seeded, and mix these into the mush, with a half teaspoonful of cayenne. Fill the center husk with a piece of the chicken and some of the mush. Roll the others around, each spread with a tablespoonful of the mush. Tie at each end and boil an hour. Viaggio. Scald a quart of good southern white cornmeal, making it moist but not soft. Have a chicken boiled until tender and separate it into parts. Season the broth with a pulp of 2 dozen chili peppers, a quart of the whole olives, 2 pounds of raisins, a cupful of sweet lard, salt, and a suspicion of garlic. Add enough cornmeal to thicken like gravy. Lay one of the prepared husks flat. Put a piece of chicken on it and 2 tablespoonfuls of the thickened gravy. Fold the husk over with the chicken inside and roll around the 6 more husks, spreading each with 2 tablespoonfuls of the scalded meal. Tie each end securely with a narrow strip of the husk and steam 3 hours or longer. End of section 9. Read by Elijah Fisher.
Section 10 of 101 Mexican Dishes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth. Olla Podrida. Ajo queso. Boil 3 Spanish peppers and pass the pulp through a sieve. Fry a small onion and a clove of garlic chopped fine, in hot olive oil. Add the pepper pulp, a small piece of butter, salt, a dash of Tabasco, and a cupful of grated cheese. Stir as it heats and add thin cream until it will pour nicely. Serve immediately on hot toasted biscuits. Almiba. Put 2 cupfuls of brown sugar in a saucepan, add a half cupful of milk, and boil gently until a little put in cold water can be rolled into a ball between the fingers. Stir steadily while boiling, add a lump of butter the size of an egg. When this is melted, remove from the fire and beat until the mixture begins to look creamy and slightly granulated. Stir in quickly a pound of English walnuts, shelled and broken. Beat for a moment and then turn into buttered tins to harden. Azucarillo. Cream a quarter of a cupful of butter with a half cupful of powdered sugar. Add gradually a quarter of a cupful of milk and 7/8 of a cupful of flour. Flavor with vanilla and spread very thin, with a broad knife, on a buttered inverted dripping pan. Sprinkle with blanched and chopped almonds, crease in 3-inch squares, and bake until delicately browned. While warm, cut the squares apart and roll slightly. Blanquillos. Chop 2 large onions fine and fry in hot olive oil. Add 2 large peeled and sliced tomatoes and a teaspoonful of ground dry chili. Cook 20 minutes and just before serving, put in a half dozen hard-boiled eggs cut in quarters. Pour over toast. Café con leche. Set the drip coffee pot where it will keep hot. Put a cupful of ground coffee into the strainer and pour 2 tablespoonfuls of boiling water in the top. In 5 minutes, pour in a little more water, adding a little at a time until you have used 4 cupfuls, but never pour in water a second time until the grounds have ceased to bubble. In serving, fill the cup only half full of coffee and add the rest in boiling milk. On top, put a tablespoonful of hot cream. Criollo guisado. Get 10 of the Mexican tortillas, cut them in small pieces, and fry in hot lard. In another pan, fry a large onion and a clove of garlic chopped fine. Just as it browns, add the fried tortillas and brown together for a few minutes. Then add a pound and a half of mild cheese grated and a cupful of chopped olives. When all are fried together nicely, season with salt and pour over it a chili sauce, and put in a deep dish and bake for 15 minutes. Serve as soon as taken from the oven. Emparedado. Beat into a cupful of cold mashed potatoes 1 of thick sour cream or milk, and add 2 beaten eggs. Sift into a cupful of flour a half teaspoonful each of soda and salt, and beat this lightly into the potatoes and milk. Drop the batter in big spoonfuls on a hot griddle and bake on both sides. Put grated ham, chopped olives, and a little parsley on one cake and place the other on top to form a sandwich. Serve hot and pass with chili sauce. Enchilada. Slice 2 Spanish onions in thin rings, cut 2 fresh chilies across in rings, removing the seeds, and slice 3 ripe firm tomatoes. Put these in alternate layers in a shallow bowl, sprinkle parsley and breadcrumbs over the top, and cover with a dressing made of 3 parts oil to 1 of vinegar, seasoned with salt. Serve ice cold. Rellenar Mexicano. Cut a pound of mild cheese into tiny bits. Prepare a cupful of olives stoned and chopped fine, 1 large onion chopped fine, and 10 chili prunes, that is, the dried shells of the chilies without the seeds, toasted and crushed fine. To these add a pinch of marjoram crushed fine, a tablespoonful of olive oil, and a teaspoonful of cider vinegar. Mix all well together, let stand an hour, and then put between thin slices of bread and butter. Mexicano Americano. Cream a quarter of a pound of butter, adding by degrees the beaten yolks of 6 eggs. Beat together until thick and creamy, then sift in 10 ounces of flour, stirring all the time. Whisk up the whites of the 6 eggs and gently but thoroughly Stir these in, adding sufficient milk to make a medium thick batter. Flavor with vanilla. Bake in waffle irons, well greased and hot. Butter each waffle as it comes from the iron, and dust with fine sugar mixed with a little powdered cinnamon. Migas. Soak slices of stale bread and squeeze dry. Put plenty of fresh lard in a frying pan, and when boiling hot put in an onion chopped fine, some ground chili, and a pinch of sweet marjoram. Lay the slices of bread in this with plenty of fresh crumbled goat's cheese, and fry for 10 minutes, stirring to cook on all sides. Remove to a hot plate and cover with fresh grated cheese, stoned ripe olives, and hard boiled eggs, chopped fine. Molette. Beat together a cupful of cold boiled squash, one of milk, and 2 eggs. Sift together a cupful of cornmeal, 1 of flour, a half teaspoonful of salt, and 2 of baking powder. Mix all together into a smooth batter, and bake on both sides in little cakes on a hot griddle. Serve hot with sugar sprinkled on each. Pan relleno. Chop onion very fine and mix with mild cheese cut in small pieces in the proportion of 1/3 onion to 2/3 cheese. Add a few ripe olives stoned and cut in half, and a pinch of oregano. Mix this together with a dressing made of oil and vinegar, 2/3 oil and 1/3 vinegar. Cut off the top of a small loaf of French bread the long way, dig out the center, and fill with the cheese mixture. Put the crust back on top and cover with the mixture, and bake in a rather quick oven. Polenta. Into 3 pints of boiling water put a teaspoonful of salt and a tablespoonful of butter. When boiling, sift in slowly, stirring constantly, about a pint of Indian meal, and boil a half hour. Have ready, hot, a cupful of good gravy and 1 of tomato sauce, made with chili. Put a layer of the cooked Indian meal in the bottom of a baking dish, then the sauce and gravy, sprinkled with a little grated cheese. Fill the dish with these alternate layers, and bake for half an hour. Serve hot with a little extra chili. Pueblecillo. Sauté little half-inch squares of chicken or calf's liver in olive oil over a brisk fire when nicely browned. Add some thick tomato sauce and some leftover gravy. Into this cut up half-inch lengths of cooked macaroni, mushrooms, and a few olives cut small. Season highly and work in a big lump of butter. Serve on toasted squares. Tortas Serrano. Beat 6 eggs together until light. Add a half cupful of flour and an onion chopped fine. Stir in lightly 1 teaspoonful of baking powder and a pinch of salt. Cut a half pound of mild cream cheese into thin squares and add to the egg mixture. Have ready a kettle of hot lard. Take up 1 piece of cheese at a time, with as much of the egg mixture as the spoon will hold, and drop into the fat and fry until brown. Serve with hot chili sauce. Tortilla de huevos. Chop a small clove of garlic and fry in olive oil. Add a cupful of mushrooms, cut small, and a half cupful of stewed tomatoes. Season with salt and pepper. Make a plain omelet, and just before folding it over, spread this on top. Serve immediately. End of section 10. End of 101 Mexican Dishes by May E. Southworth.